What up, Jared? You're on mute.
What's up, Van? How you doing?
Doing great. How are you?
Man, I'm the greatest in the world. Thanks for asking. I appreciate it.
Well, guys, we're excited about today's call. As you guys know, and some of you don't, we do this call twice a month. It's our leadership masterclass call, and it's been a pleasure for me to be able to host these over the past 2 years. Now we've been doing it. And, just to recap a little bit about why we do these calls, Zoom has really changed our business for the better immensely. As many of you guys are aware, and if you're not aware, we're breaking records on pretty much every program that we're involved with. Biggest headcount, most promotions, most sales. It's really insane to think about where we are today compared to where we were as we came out of COVID, and even pre-COVID. The business is just bigger than ever. And we really believe that networking and Zoom has been a big part of how, more of the best practices across our business have been spread faster. Whether it's the Sunday calls with Larry, whether it's the Thursday calls with leaders, I know that Larry does as well, whether it's the rep calls that all the programs have, the one-on-ones, and then this call as well. We look at these avenues of information as great resources for you guys to utilize to get better. And obviously, as many of you guys, I wouldn't say obviously because there's so many new people, but many of you guys have got to experience our regional meetings, which are just getting better and better and better, where we get to touch every person, whether it's a leader, a new person that comes into our business, and we're doing this quarterly. So if you weren't able to attend our regional meetings in the beginning of the year, don't worry, we have more coming up. We have big regional meetings planned coming up here in May. I know there's one in Dallas in April. Some of you guys are going to be able to attend our R&R, which is happening in 3 weeks. But we really just look at sharing information. And the purpose of this call is to give you guys every couple weeks, give you guys a topic that's extremely focused and relevant to leadership development from an owner who's kicking ass in that specific topic. And the great thing is, especially if you're new, is to realize that these people that are speaking on calls that are running million-dollar businesses were just like you. At one point, they were new people thinking about quitting. They were leaders struggling to build their teams. And in many cases, they're owners who are also went through the different ups and downs, who have found ways to be successful. And so the goal is to share with you guys these best practices to help you get better. And we want as many people on these calls as possible, but we got to make them entertaining for you. But we also know that some of the offices, they get busy or stuff's happening. So the great thing is, if you haven't been able to watch all these calls, you can go on, you can talk to your owner, you can get Maddie's email, and she can get you guys the Slack channel or the YouTube channel with special access. So you can access all the previous calls we've done. I get people talking to me all the time. It's, hey, I watched a call that Bud did, a few months back. I watched this call that, that whoever, Dana Iverson or Odreen or someone did before, that's really helping them today. So, and really the difference now with these calls moving forward is we want them to be more interactive, where you guys are asking questions. So me and Jared today are going to work hard on making this call, try to get wrapped up at the half-hour mark, maybe 35 max, so you guys can ask questions and we can have a nice back and forth on the subject. And the subject matter today is mentality. As you guys have seen in the last few calls, we focused on recruiting, retention, cycle development, but mentality is a big part of what makes people successful, as someone's moving up in our business and in our industry. And there's no better person to talk about mentality than Jared Hill. So Jared, a year ago today, you basically opened up in Utah on 5G. And that was after, you had originally opened up your first office in South Carolina, Columbia on AT&T, and your office, you had to go on a retrain. And for whatever reason, you talked about it before, but for those of you guys who are new, Jared struggled in his first office. He had his own challenges, and he had to go back, and he wanted to go back and work with Mike Lay in his office and fix some of the habits, fix some of the problems. And so talk about mentality being tested. He was tested. And like many of you guys that are going through your training program now, you're going through challenges, whether it's team building, training people, recruiting. So Jared's a guy who had to, go through his own challenges and his own mentality being tested. And boy, has he overcome it. He not only went on the retrain, which some people would have said, hey, I can't do that. He did it. He opened back up in Utah, Salt Lake City, has had one of the best years of anybody on 5G. Over the last year, saved over 100 grand, now putting money into his promotions. Jared, you got 4 promotions now, 2 people on deck. You've been in the top 5. I think a couple weeks you were number 1 on 5G. Is that right? Or what, am I wrong there?
We had 1 week. I won't stretch. We had
one week, number 1.
Yeah,
so Jared always in the top, and he's a student. He's learning from Yoma on conversion and quality. Just a great guy, but really a great person to talk to you guys about mentality, because as a leader, you're going to have to develop a strong mentality in order to be successful. So Jared, first of all, congrats on the last year. I'm sure you're happy and not satisfied though. And, looking forward to seeing you in person at R&R, but mentality is your thing. So why don't we get into it? And if you guys have any questions during the call, please put it in the chat. And I'll be obviously kind of asking questions as well. But Jared, let's go and hear from you.
All right, perfect. Let's start. Well, thank you first for letting me, speak on this matter and this subject. I think there's so many qualified people in our business, to kind of handle the subject, but I definitely take, honor in being able to speak about it because I love this subject. I love mentality in general because it's a subject that can be exasperated. It's a subject that's constantly changing with us, is constantly developing with us and our business and the world around us. So I love mentality. Because you can look at it in so many different facets. So I will love for you guys to, write as many questions as you can as we go through this, because like I said, I love this subject, a lot. So we'll dive into it. So at least we hit the next slide. So what we're going to cover today, what I want to actually go over what mentality is, because I think a lot of people have a different definition of what mentality is, what it looks like, where it comes from. So let's talk about what mentality actually is. We're going to go over the types of mentality. And then can mentality be built, or can mentality be changed? So we're going to go all of that as well too. At least we'll go to the next slide. So I asked my office, I did an experiment, and I asked my office, what comes to mind when you think of mentality, right? I just wanted to know, what do people think of? And there was a couple adjectives that kept being repeated, right? That kept being brought up. And it was adjectives like untouchable, unstoppable, like a warrior mentality, relentless, which we all love that book, right? We all recommend that book, Relentless, determined, committed, focused, driven, and so on. Like a lot of words like that. And I love all of those words because I do think that is mentality, but that's not all mentality is. And a lot of those words have more sometimes of a harder kind of like negation to it, or like a more like deeper meaning to it. So and I don't think mentality should only be thought about in those ways. So next slide, please. So I wanted to go what Webster actually broke down mentality as, and he broke it down into two different answers. So it says it's the mental power or capacity. So someone's like intelligence, right? And then it says it's the mood or way of thought. So your outlook on things. And I love the picture that we put there because it says mentality is defined as the essence of the mind. So everything you think of, everything that's inside of your head, it will be your mentality. So we'll go next slide, Elise. So like I asked him like, so where does mentality come from? Like, is it something you're born with? Like, is it like, where does it come from? So like I said, most people would associate mentality with some form of like toughness or hardship. And I said, I personally really disagree with that. And one of my favorite quotes is change the way you look at things and the things you look at will also change. And I think that's going to start shifting mentality. And I think a lot of people in this business, one thing I love about this business is how fast we get promoted. One thing I hate about this business, sorry for saying this, but it's how fast we get promoted. Because a lot of us have no experience, no skills, like nothing. And they're like, well, I got to be ready in 6 months. Now, if you can be ready in 6 months, great. Do it in 4, do it in 6. But that doesn't mean you're bad if it takes you a little bit longer than 6 months. So you got to change the way you're looking at, what you're doing and why you're doing these things. At least next slide really quickly. So then I did a little bit of research and I went over some research and they broke down like the powers that be, the psychologists and those guys, the 15 personalities or 15 mindsets that people have. And he said you can come into a category of these things, like a plethora of these things. But these are the main ones. So you have like the social mindset, you have the growth mindset, fear mindset, lazy mindset, the envy mindset, business mindset, dreamer mindset, the follower mindset, greed mindset, gratitude mindset, confident mindset, creative mindset, short-term mindset, angry mindset, and then productive mindset. And I really like this because I think we talk about these, but I never really looked at them in these kind of like facets in this way before. And so I would challenge you guys to like screenshot this or get the link like Van said earlier, and then ask yourself, what mindsets do you have on here? And then, maybe do it with your team and do it with your office, because these mindsets can be good and they can be bad. It just depends. So one that I will highlight is the dreamer mindset. Is that a bad mindset? I would say no. Like you think you should always have hope. You should always dream. But they always say vision without work is just a dream. So then that makes it a bad mindset because you can't just be a dreamer. You have to have work with that as well too. So look at these mindsets and kind of see what kind of category you fall into, and then how you can shift into, different mentalities for sure. So next slide would be, so as I kept doing research, I'm like, well, people ask me all the time, like, well, Jared, how did you overcome so much in life or so much in this business? Or how do you go through this different things and you're so positive about it? So I listed a couple different mindsets and mentalities that actually push the needle forward. So I think we have the growth mindset, the curious mindset, solution-oriented mindset, and then an abundance mindset. And I think a lot of us know these things or heard of these things before, but I have a couple things I want to read about these and what these mindsets actually, what they are. So it says the growth mindset. A growth mindset is a belief system that ability, skills, and intelligence can be developed. A growth mindset believes that change is possible. When a fixed mindset is the belief and system that abilities and skills are fixed. It is actually a limiting belief system. So a growth mindset sees problems and challenges as opportunities to learn and grow. It thrives on challenges, and fixed mindset sees failures as fatals and gets defeated easily. Having a growth mindset allows you to learn to be better. Everything is a learned experience to someone with a growth mindset. So when you talk about like, me retraining or first office is not doing well, why did that happen? I looked at it as a growth mindset. It's an experience to learn. Like, what did I do wrong the first time and how can I do better the second time? I got promoted to running my own business within 12 months, 14 months of me not running a business ever. So what do I owe success to? Like, why does it guarantee that I have to be successful the first time when, 90 something percent of businesses fail within their first years? So I didn't look at it as failure. I looked at it as an opportunity to learn, to be better, because there are people who are still doing it. Does that make sense, man?
Yeah, it's really, really important that what Jared's talking about, because, we're talking about all these different ways of looking at things, but what really seems to be the most important thing to look at is how you deal with failure. And I don't know anybody really in the business world that's successful long-term that doesn't, lose. It's like they say in the UFC, everybody gets knocked out at some point, I guess, except for John Jones, but everybody gets knocked out. And, everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face. And I think that anybody that's on this call, regardless if you're brand new or you're someone who's been doing this a while, failure is inevitable. And it's really kind of how you look at it. And what you're hearing from Jared is a really good point. So many people that are successful in our business that are running offices that are making well into the six figures and even millions into the seven figures didn't have experience before this business operating a business. We're not these former entrepreneurs, didn't have all these skills coming in and they had to learn them as they went. And so many people, as they're going through, unfortunately build up these, maybe improper expectations, and they're kind of looking at something more of a sprint as opposed to a marathon. And Jared, what impressed me about you is that you didn't lose sight of the marathon. You didn't lose sight of, okay, I may be in a tough spot right now, but I know this is not going to define me long-term. And, we're coming into May and June and some of the biggest growth months of our business. And we expect to double and triple in size as a business over the course of the next 3, 6, 9 months. But that doesn't come without challenges. It doesn't come without, people building and losing people disappointing you, you disappointing yourself because you made a decision that you look back and say, hey, I should have done something different. But what I'm really curious about for you, Jared, is like, why did that happen for you? What was it? A conversation you had with your mentors? Was it, someone you network with that also went on a retrain that bounced back and really had success? Was it conversations you had with Mike when you went to his office? Because we can say to people, hey, Jared's mentally tough, but what we don't want to miss is what you did during those times, who you talked to, what conversations you had, because it would have been, many people would have looked at it and said, hey, I guess I'm not meant to be an entrepreneur. But you didn't make that decision. So were there conversations you had? Were there people you talked to that shaped your perspective before you went back out and opened up again?
For sure. I'm a big advocate in the phrase, it takes a village to raise a child. I know for a fact I have a village around me. None of my success is all predicated to me. It's definitely to my team that's around me, my mentors, the people that I talk to. But I think, Van, the first conversation that changed my mindset in this business was actually Ken was running a call, and he was running a call, and he was speaking about gratitude, and he told himself that he felt like he should pay Larry $10,000 a week, if not more, for being in his business. You remember this call?
Oh yeah.
And he said because of what this business was allowed him to do and shaped him, that he owes so much to this business. And I'm listening to that call, and I was just a leader at the time. I wasn't even like assistant manager or manager, but it resonated with me at that time when he was saying that, because I kind of felt the same exact way. Because I said, name a business where you can go and within 3 years you own it, or you can make the kind of money that we make. Like, I seriously, name it. Like, you can't. So even if it took me 3 years, and I'm not suggesting that to anybody, but even if it took me 3 years to get promoted, I'm still better off than what corporate America can give to me. And that's just a fact. So I told my mentor that. And when I told her that, she says, I think you're ready to get promoted. I'm like, huh? I just told you I'll spend more time learning. Like, why would you say I'm ready to get promoted now? Because she says, now you have like the kind of like right mentality. So I think that's what first, started it for me, is to look at it that of how much I'm growing. So I personally never chose this business just to be a successful business owner. I wanted to use this business to change my life. And I tell that to Larry all the time, because this can make me a better, son, a better brother, eventually a better, husband, a better father. So I look at this business as changing my life, but the money and the offices and the people, that's just a bonus for me. But I look at this as a way that I can change me as a person. And I'm grateful that I get that opportunity.
And you're making plenty of money, so that doesn't hurt, right?
It does not at all. It makes it kind of
Yeah.
sweet. I get to do what I love, be around people that I love, meet a lot of awesome people that I love, and then constantly give somebody else that opportunity every single day. I don't know what else like I would do.
There was an email sent, I think it was probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, about what is the definition of sharp. What's sharp and what makes someone sharp, and what, for you guys building teams, like what characteristics do you look for? Well, if I was interviewing Jared, he's sharp to me because he's humble, because he's appreciative, he's grateful, and he really is willing to be a student. And regardless of someone's resume, regardless of how fancy they dress, regardless of whatever they sound like and look like, there's people that just aren't humble. They're not willing to get their fingers dirty. They're not willing to go through a mentality shift or do whatever they have to do. And it doesn't mean we prejudge in the prelim. We don't prejudge. We don't prejudge in the second round. We don't even prejudge when someone starts. But as people start, you start to identify the characteristics that make a person. And, being humble, being appreciative, being grateful, and someone that looks at something and sees, obviously, that we got to go door to door. We got to start off entry level, but they're looking and seeing the management. And eventually they say, hey, I want to be successful. And this is how I'm going to use my vehicle. I'm going to give it a shot. And I think it's important for you guys that are building people to pay attention to someone, and are they grounded? Are they appreciative? Do they really enjoy the process of getting taught and learning new things? And I think Jared's an example of a guy that, maybe out the gate didn't succeed, but many of the greatest people in our business didn't succeed right away. And it's a microcosm of how running an office is kind of like in the beginning for someone getting into leadership. Sometimes it takes people longer. Some people in our business were not great at sales when they first started, but ended up becoming multimillionaires because of leaders they had, because they were humble enough to realize, okay, I've got to get better. And so I just think it's an important lesson when we think about mentality, how that is really the most important aspect of a person, even over the fact whether they're good at sales right away. And if you keep promoting people who are only great at sales, and your business or your team is only based around who does the most sales that day, and you're not looking at a person and thinking, well, if I could teach them how to sell, the other characteristics that make who they are so much better for leadership. This person would be so much of a better manager if we could just teach them how to be more confident with their pitch, more consistent with the product knowledge. And I really think it's important to identify mentality, not just did they sell today, so that's my best person. And if you can identify those things, because if people would have looked at Jared and judged him based on how good he was at running an office initially, then he wouldn't be where he is today, who's a really big, important part of the 5G program, and he's going to continue to open up offices. So good stuff. I know we went on a tangent there, Jared, but I know that was a part of sort of this discussion today, was talking about your mentality and how what's helped you and what you did to fix it. So you guys heard him. He networked, he was on calls, he listened, and he appreciated the fact that people above him were constantly willing to help and share information. No matter how tough it may have gotten, there was always a hand reaching out if you wanted to reach for it and say, hey, help me up, which is obviously what you did, which is great.
100%. And I challenge you guys to talk to people that you look up to. Like you bring up Dana Iverson's name, like a lot, who I have like a lot of respect for. And I was just talking to her last week, and because I'm trying to promote more deals and copy things that she's doing and her promotions. And she told me 1 year in promoting deals, like she lost like a ton of money. And I was like, well, how did that make you feel? And she goes, well, my upline taught me that I look at it as you paid X amount of money to learn this amount of experience, like a degree kind of thing. And I was like, I never looked at it that way. So now when I'm promoting deals, I have more experience in my mentality, because I just keep talking to people who that I don't just looking for what they did well, but how did they handle what they got there, and how did they get there as well. So it's going to equip you with more experience. And I think that's one of the most important things about mentality, Van, that people overlook, is that you have to have experience. And experience doesn't always have to be negative, but you got to go through things. You got to go through life to get experience. And a lot of us kind of shelter ourselves to try to avoid experiences. And I'm the kind of person, I'm running towards them, because the more that I gain, the more that I go through, the more your mentality is going to constantly, shift and evolve. So I just encourage people to like get as many experience in whatever it is, as much as you can. If you look silly, so what? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what people think about. Like, just get as much experience as you can, because that's where your mentality is going to shift. And that's where your mentality is going to come from. Just go through whatever you got to go through as much as you can.
Yeah, we don't control the hand we were dealt. We're all born a certain way. We were raised by our parents a certain way. Many of us, including myself, even though we wanted to be successful, kind of came into this employee minded. And so our mentalities were a certain way. But the thing about mentality is if you hang around people who have a better mentality than you, if you're willing to hang out with people that are stronger mentally than you, that have bigger goals than you, that maybe look at sacrifice differently than you, maybe look at personal time differently than you, look at money differently than you, but you look at them and you say, I want to think like them, right? And you hang around those people enough, they can change your life. And when you're the right person, you change their life too, right? So it's kind of that combination of looking at yourself and saying, what's my current mentality? How do I look at things currently? So how do I look at, hours, time into something? How do I look at making personal sacrifices? How do I look at negatives? How do I look at rejection? How do I look at failure? And if you feel that you don't have a great way of looking at it, well, that's okay. But then you got to challenge yourself to hang out with people and talk to people who have a better perspective than you. And so much of how we handle issues is how we look at it, right? We're all going to go through problems. How do you look at the problem? And what you're hearing from Jared is he was going through the ups and downs of promoting outside deals. He's like, man, I promoted this promotion. I put this money in. Here's what's going on with it. How do I look at it? Well, let me talk to Dana, because Dana went through it, as opposed to Jared giving himself his own advice and saying, hey, I'm either going to be happy or sad or whatever. He's getting input from someone who's been down that road before and has experience and now can educate him on it, right? So the big part of developing it is putting yourself in front of people and listening to people who have been down the road. And guys, we've got, over 40 years of business experience in this industry to keep going up and networking about, right? And lucky for us, not only do we have great examples that are running offices, we have great examples of people who have built organizations who are no longer running offices. And obviously we get Larry, who talks to us every week just because he loves our business and he wants to see it continue to grow. Utilizing all these assets is really important to your mentality growing. So I know today, guys, was a little bit of a different style call. I know there's maybe 1 or 2 slides left, Jared, if you want to go through them.
Yeah, I just want to just elaborate a little bit more on what you just talked about, because what you spoke about is the curious mindset. And I want to read to you guys a little bit what a curious mindset is, because I think it's very, very important that you adopt a curious mindset. And I think the more curious that you become is going to shift your life, because curiosity, it has to do with willingness. And when you're willing to do something, it changes your attitude. And I always tell people that your like, if you always have an attitude of gratitude, it will always change your altitude. And I believe by that, like I live by that, because it's too hard for me to be upset or angry with what's going on in life if I'm always like thankful, if I'm always like looking for something to be better at. So if you have that curious mindset of always asking questions, it's 100% going to shift just your life. And if you're better as a person, then of course, it automatically you have to be better at this business as well too. But curious mindset, it says, the curiosity mindset is a powerful tool for humans. It is what motivates us to learn and be pressured the right way. Curiosity builds and is burning desire to learn, to discover, to explore, to know. Markets and media producers use this to their advantage, to target curiosity, to get to clickbaits, to keep scrolling, to continue watching, or to continue to buy. The great thing about curiosity is that it can cultivate it. You can choose to view life when you look at it, or you can choose to look at it through a different lens of curiosity. So I'm at a point now where I don't know, like I talk to Lamine like almost like every day, and I will ask him like the stupidest questions, like, hey, what do you think about this? Am I thinking about it the wrong way? Am I thinking about it the right way? And he talks about so many different things, like, well, look at it this way, or well, look at it that way. So it just always staying curious. It makes it even easier to network, because you don't even have to know what you want to network about. You can literally just ask the question, and and then it blows up, from there. So
Yeah.
I did want to elaborate a little bit more on our curiosity mindset for sure.
Well, guys, and if you guys have any questions, please ask, as we want to make this more of an open forum as we do these calls. But I'll just say this, like when I was in high school, or even when I was younger, I thought to myself, nobody else believed this, but I wanted to be a professional athlete. And I remember thinking, maybe I'll be a wide receiver in the NFL. If not, I'll be like in the NBA. I'll be like John Stockton. I thought maybe I'll make it there. Well, I pretty much found out as I got into middle school and high school, that wasn't going to happen. And it really was because I was too short. I wasn't fast enough. I couldn't jump high enough, wasn't strong enough, and just didn't have the physical ability. I convinced myself I had the mental, but I definitely didn't have the physical, right? So in sports, it's not like I could hang out with LeBron James and, spend 2 or 3 years with him. And then all of a sudden I can copy what LeBron James does and then become an NBA player. I could never. I could spend decades and decades and decades with LeBron and never do what he does on the NBA court. In the business world, it's different. In the business world, you can hang out with someone who's the LeBron James, right? Or the Kobe or the Michael Jordan, whoever your favorite player is of their sport, which is business. You can hang out with them and you can copy what they do. You can copy because it's all in the brain. It's all in the mental. And you can hang out with these people and you can imitate how they talk to people. You can imitate the conversations they have. You can imitate their outlook, their psychology. You can imitate their work ethic if you're willing to put in the work. You can imitate their attitude. You can imitate their structure. You can copy everything. You could literally go to Richard Anderson's office and anybody that we look at and say, hey, they're on top of the mountain, and just copy what they do. It's not like they're LeBron James, dunking from the free throw line and you're like, well, I can't even jump. All these things people are doing. They're talking to people, they're running meetings, they're having conversations. This is the structure they have. So if you believe in that and you look at mentality as something you can copy, not something that you're naturally born with and you can't shift, well, then you're in luck. This is a great opportunity for you to be able to copy other people who have better mentalities than you. And you might be in an office that's okay, right? Well, that's why we have Zoom. Maybe you think bigger than your owner. Maybe you think bigger than your leader. Well, that's okay too. Get on Zooms, travel to offices. Maybe your mentality is you're thinking as big as a national consultant and you're a leader in an office and your owner just wants to open up a couple deals. No problem. That's why we have these calls. That's why you can network at these regional events. That's why you can get on Zoom as soon as possible. So just remember that and don't think of people who are more successful than you in business and think that they have some special powers. They don't. They just copied people who are smarter than them or better than them, and they use it for themselves, matching, of course, their personality, because not everybody's going to have the same personality. Jared's got his type of personality. I've got mine. So when we network with people, we try to talk to people who sort of match our personality types. And that way, when we copy them, it works for what we do. There's going to be certain people you copy. It's not going to work for what you do. So don't copy everybody. Find someone who's like you and take what they do and apply it to what you need to improve your situation. So anyways, Jared, I don't know if you have one more slide, but let's get into some questions.
Yeah, let's get into some questions. So the last slide is going to be my contact information and things of that nature. So let's get into some questions.
Great. So you guys, if you're on the call, you got Jared's info there. I think Jared, his story is great. We didn't really get into it completely today, but anybody that wants to know more about the stuff he did and what he did on his retrain and what he learned and all that stuff, reach out because what he's done is really, really impactful, I think, for everybody. But let's get into some questions. So how do you teach? Well, first of all, the YouTube channel, Maddie, if you could send out the YouTube link to all the owners so we can get that so people can watch all the rest of the calls we have, including this one. But the next question, Jared, is how do you teach someone with a weak mentality to develop a strong one? So if you got someone that comes in and you can tell their mentality is not very strong, how do you improve that?
Well, there's two things. One, they got to be willing to learn how to have a better mentality. If they're not willing to learn, it just is not going to work in general. And I'm okay with that. I can't change everybody. I can't fix everybody. And some people you just can't teach mentality to. But for those who are willing to learn, but maybe have a weak mentality, I think the first thing you have to do is just you be the example. You show it. Like you show what a strong mentality is. You show the way you look at things. Like you do it first, and I think they'll be able to copy. So when I hang around a lot of mentors, when I just ask the Shadow Ken or ask the Shadow Larry or Lamine or you or Dana or Richard, those guys I talk to, I'm just watching to see what you do and how you guys do things is literally teaching me mentality. Because before we got on this call, you had to have a situation in your office, and I'm listening to like, okay, well, I want to see how he handles this situation with his owner, because that's going to teach me how to do it. So I think you being an example is the easiest way to teach mentality to people. Is you be the example first.
Yeah, like so, Jared's talking about being a student, and he's talking about, if someone, maybe someone's weak or maybe they're not as confident, are they studious to learn how to get better? If you're giving them advice, are they taking the advice? Is their attitude, they might get down a little bit, but do they have that attitude to bounce back? And, we can't, if someone has 23, 24, 28 years of habits, and one of those habits is they got a really crappy outlook on life, again, you're there to help people, but there's certain people that you just got to look at and say, this is not the right industry for them, because they really need a boss all the time to always be cheering them up. So pay attention to someone's student mentality. Like Jared said, if someone's weak at the beginning, relate to them, tell them hey, you went through the same stuff. Don't be this person that acts like you were strong right away. Make people feel good because you went through the same things they went through. Have them talk to someone that's like them so they can see themselves in the future, someone who's really great and doing good, but it's similar to the background to them. That'll give people more confidence. So, but Jared's right. Student mentality, attitude, pay attention to those things initially. Okay. What is your opinion? We got questions flying in. What is your opinion on being hard on yourself and when is it self-destructive?
Oh man, that's an important one. That I do have to work on my a lot. I think I'm harder on myself than anybody can ever be harder on myself. And I think that's why it's important to have strong mentors. Ken would tell me all the time, like, Jared, you're too focused on getting back to number one. You're not having fun. And I'm like, oh, you're right. I am way too focused on that. And it changes my outlook on things as well, too. So I do think you can be too hard on yourself. That's when you have to kind of focus on the process and not the destination. But I think the best advice that I can give you on that is continuously read, but continuously network with people who are a better position than you, or maybe they're not struggling in a particular area that you're struggling in, because they're going to coach you more freely, and it'll shift your mentality on that. And that's how you do it. But yes, you can be too hard on yourself some point in time. You can. So I learned one time the best advice that I could give you on that one is learn how to be patient with being impatient.
Well, I would say if you're hard on yourself, it's a good thing. That means you're beating yourself up before anybody else is. And
Yeah.
there's really nobody I know that's successful that's not really hard on themselves. So if you're whoever asked that, like, it's good to be hard on yourself, but yeah, there is a point where if it's messing with your confidence, then maybe you're going too far. And like Jared said, like, self-talk's really important. If the things you say to yourself is, hey, I suck and I'm not good at this. Okay. But then do you say I can't learn, or do you say I can't get better? If you're going to say, hey, I'm bad at something, no problem. But then say to yourself, I know I can get better at it if I just copy people who are better at it than me. So it's kind of like that combination of always remaining a student and humble, but then always having the ego to say, if somebody else can do it, I can do it too.
Yep.
You got to have those two things. You got to have no ego at times to say that I'm willing to learn. I'm not too cool for school. I'm willing to go through whatever I have to go through. But then the other part of it is you still got to have an ego to say, if this person can get results, I just got to copy what they're doing. So whether it's a high roller in your office, someone that's better at recruiting than you, someone who's got more people, remove the ego to learn, but keep the ego to say, I could copy them and I know I can take what they're doing and apply it to myself. So, all right. So Andrew Hayes asks, do you ever feel like there was a time you hit a plateau or a level that you could not surpass?
Yes, absolutely. And if you guys were on the Larry call this Sunday, he talked a lot about that. And yes, I did that because I think mentality also has to do with consistency, right? What you do consistently will also shift your mentality. And there's things that I stopped doing consistently, which always made me plateau, because I always was taught once you stop learning, you have to stop teaching. Because once you teach everything you learn, there's nothing else for you to do. So I've definitely hit many of plateaus in my career, and it sucked because I even had leaders that I trained who passed me because I plateaued. I had nothing else to give them. I had nothing else to teach them. And I remember feeling that feeling, and it sucked. And I said, I never ever want to feel this feeling ever again. So that's why I think I'm such a student now, because I don't want to ever get back to that point where I do plateau and I do stay complacent, or I do get comfortable in the situation. So I think that's where a lot of the student mentality comes from, because I plateaued many a times. So the answer to your question is yes, I have done it. And the way out of it is to continuously network, continue to get better, and find people who are better than you. Don't be the world's tallest midget. And I don't mean that in an offensive way. I really mean that in the way of, like, don't always be the best person in the room. Find someone who's better than you. Find someone who's better than you outside of your office. Find someone who has more people in your crew. Find someone's office has a better installation rate, has a better approval rate. Find someone who promotes more deals, faster deals. Like, always find someone who's better than you, and the plateaus will be few, far, and in between.
Yeah. And like he talked about in the initial thing is habits. Like, you could have all the motivation in the world. You could be, maybe at a position where you feel like you can't get ahead. It just typically goes back to what are the things you do every day. And if it's kind of like you'll always stay the same if you don't change. Like, if you keep doing the same things and you keep you keep your habits the same, then your results will probably stay very similar. So the only way to get better is to go outside of the things you're comfortable with. And you may have to look at someone who does things that you're like, man, that's more work than I'm used to doing. You know, I know there's people that sometimes don't network because they know that if they ask the questions, they're going to get answers that they don't want. They know that if they ask someone who's kicking ass, hey, how come you do so much better in the field? They know that person's going to say, because they work the entire day. They know that person's going to say they're not in their car, they're not on their phone. Some owners don't travel and network because they realize if they go to that person's office, they're going to see that owner in the building, first one in, last one to leave, conversations all day. And they're afraid, man, I'm going to actually have to work a lot harder. So you got to ask yourself, are you willing to change your habits to match someone who's getting better results than you? Because that's how you can get out of these plateaus, is to adjust the way you do things to match someone who's getting better results. Okay. How can we switch mentally? I'm hearing a voice in the background. I don't know what that is. How can we switch mentally? So I guess mentality.
How can somebody switch from mentality? I think that's what that person's kind of asking,
okay.
right? How can they switch their mentality?
Yeah.
There's different ways that you can do that. And I think I will start off by saying everyone doesn't have to be this way, but for me, is experience, like going through things. Like people say, well, Jared, how do you get better at, losing teams? Well, you probably got to lose some teams, unfortunately, to get better at that. Like you have to actually go through it. Because I can tell you as much as I want, but until you experience it, you might not really fully understand it or comprehend it. So I do believe sometimes experience is the best teacher. And then also educate yourself on things that you want. Like that quote that I said earlier, change the way you look at things, and things you look at change. So if you want to switch your mentality, change the way you're looking at things. And how do you do it? Educate yourself. Talk to people who look at it differently than you, and kind of figure it out from there. But experience, and then constantly educating yourself and reading.
Nice. Jared, someone sounds like they're jumping into your screen over there. I don't know who's over there. Sounds like
I think I might be on a different link. Somebody might be on a link by accident.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so we got a couple more questions. We'll wrap it up. These are really good. So you were saying, Jared, there was a slide earlier you had that talked about attitude and gratitude affects your altitude. That was what it was. It wasn't a slide. It was the quote. Attitude and gratitude affects your altitude.
Yeah. So if you always have an attitude of gratitude, it will determine your altitude.
I love it. How can I retrain more solid people in terms of recruiting? How can I retain more solid people in terms of recruiting?
That's a great question. And it's kind of, there's many ways that we can look at that. So without knowing the exact situation and trying to give you like a surface level answer to that question, I think a simple answer is to be a good copy, or to make good copies, be the best original. So if I want to retain people, I make them more mental tough. Am I that way? Do I come off as mentally appeasing? And that's why I don't want to always use the word mentally tough. That's why I kind of avoided certain challenges that I went through. So I don't want to make it seem like mentality means you have to go through like death and all these hard things all the time. Mentality can just be as simple as like, how do you respond to people when they cut you off? When you're driving. It can be, how do you respond to when people cut you off when you're running an impact in the office? I watch so many people run impacts in the office, and when people are talking, they like harp on that person, like, hey, I'm talking, like, be quiet. I'm like, dude, just keep running your meeting. Like, why do you care that one person is talking during your meeting? Like, that's just a bad mentality. Like, so it's not always hardship when you're trying to retain people or train people on mentalities. Is literally everything that you do and how you respond. So you being the best example of that is extremely important to how you're going to duplicate, people. So how you respond to things is how your people will respond to things.
Nice. How are you able to change your fixed mindset to a positive growth mindset?
Have strong mentors. Have strong mentors. Like I talked about earlier, it takes a village to raise a child. And I'm just so grateful for the people that I have. There's a lot of people that I look up to in this business that I talk to. I look at them, a lot of them even like family. And you got to constantly, soundboard yourself off of that to see if you're being in a fixed mindset. Because when you get to a certain level, whether it's like a top leader or a top assistant manager or a top branch manager, you now start to callous this like confident or sometimes even cocky, arrogant mentality where you know what you know because you've done it so many times. And that's very dangerous because your mindset is now callous. to where you're not open to like being what's told. And it's kind of funny, Van, because before we got on this call, Odrine calls me at like 7 in the morning, like my time, because she was like networking with one of my guys. And she goes, Jared, I gotta tell you, you're doing something wrong. And I was like, oh man, I'm about to run a call on mentality and I'm getting chewed out by Odrine. But what she said made so much sense, to me about what I can be doing, better. So I think how you do it to have a growth mindset is just constantly talk to people who are strong and are not afraid to tell you what you need to hear and not always what you want to hear. If you're being soft, people need to tell you you're being soft. If you're being weak, they need to tell you that you're being weak. If you're being selfish, they need to tell you that you're being selfish. And the right people will respond the right way. The wrong people will take it and be like, oh, they're trying to hurt me. Guys, no manager in this business that I know of is trying to hurt you. We're incentivized to help you grow in many ways, not just more than one. So we don't not trying to give you advice or feedback to hurt you. I promise you that. So always talk to people who are willing to be honest with
Yeah, it just goes back to the whole, looking at yourself and saying, hey, am I willing to adapt and change and put myself in front of people that might be stronger than me, but keeping that ego, saying, right now I'm going to wave the white flag and say I need help. But deep down, I know once I get the advice, I'm going to kick ass. That's how you got to look at it. Like you might not be the high roller right now, but once you learn their pitch, you're going to high roll the crap out of them. Right.
Yeah.
You may not have the biggest office right now, but once you learn recruiting, you're going to crush everybody. That's how you got to think. You can't, you got to be a student, but also keep that thing. Like once I learn, everybody's in trouble. All right. We got our last question here. What can I do when I feel like I need validation to be successful?
Man, it's funny that we're going to end on that question. I love that question. Because I was just talking to my promoting owner, Mike Lay, about this literally on Sunday. And I was that person. I'm not going to lie to you. I was that person that felt like I needed 10 or Mike to feel like what I'm doing is good. And it made me a bad person. It made me a bad student because I wasn't doing it out of pureness of myself. So I was living up to somebody else's goals. And when you go through hardships, if you're attached to someone else's goals and not your own, it's going to take you a very, very long time to get, where you want to go. And I promise you, it's a feeling that you don't want to be at, but I can relate to you 1,000,000% to that one. So what did I do to get out of that? I personally remember why I started this business. And yes, money is great. Money is great. But I personally never started this business for money. Me personally. Everyone else could have their own reasons, but I started this business because I wanted to be a better person and constantly be challenged and give opportunity to other people, the underdog kind of story. And when people kept saying, well, Jerry, you've been in this business for this amount of time, you should have this amount of money saved. And I started focusing on money, but my teams kept failing because I was looking for that validation of the money that people thought I should have. And when I told this person, like, hey, you're making the business unfun for me because I didn't do it for money. Like money will come once I'm doing the right things. I want to keep focused on building people and doing it the right way. So the best thing I can give to you about that, how do you seek or how do you get out of seeking validation is becoming more in tune to yourself and what you need for yourself. And that's character development. So constantly develop your own character, constantly develop your own mentality. And you got to realize it's okay to have different goals than different people. If my goal is to make $1 million and Van's goal is to make 10 million, who won at the end of the year? Well, if we both hit our goal, I don't think Van beat me. Some people might say differently, but I don't because I hit my goal. That was $1 million. So I don't look at Van with an envious mentality or validation because I hit my goal. So I would tell you, the person who asked that question, get more in tune with yourself, keep character developing, keep learning yourself, and you'll start realizing that validation isn't as important as you think. And you'll get stronger in yourself. But there will always be some or some piece of validation that we all seek as humans. That's just a human characteristic. So don't look at it as an extreme negative, but don't have it be your primary focus, if I can say that. It can be a third, or fourth focus, but don't have it be like your second or primary focus. But that's what I would tell.
Yeah, validation we all seek it in some way, shape, or form, whether it's to ourselves or from people we care about that care about us. And we're trying to say, hey, are we doing something that we believe will be worth it in some way, shape, or form? And a lot of times that's how we justify things. Like, okay, now I've made it. And I really do think like, Simon Sinek has this book. It's called Infinite Game. And he talks about like companies and people that think finite goals versus infinite goals. And I know this is like a whole topic, but if you're very like thinking finite, like my goal is to just be promoted to assistant management. And in some way, shape, or form, you think you're going to wake up one day and like your life is going to be so much different, or you're going to be the same person. The title didn't change you. The title is just something that happened because you did great things for other people. And so if you focus on titles and you focus on validation, like you're thinking that one day you're going to wake up and there's going to be this parade of people that are always showering you with compliments. And I mean, it happens here and there because you get awards and stuff like that, but that feeling goes away. And then what you're left with is, what do you do on a daily basis to help people? Right. And so if your focus is, hey, I want to get to management, and then that's it, well, then it's going to be an empty feeling because you're chasing a title that no one's following you for your title. They're following you for what you do. And if you think about your journey and your goal and your mission is to help people, and you judge yourself based on what impact you made on others based on what you do, to me, that's the thing that becomes fulfilling. It's what you do every day. It's what you do every week. It's not the title, the money in the bank account, like Jared said, that just grows. I mean, we're in a business where you get paid to help people. Literally, you get paid to help people get promoted and put them into business for themselves. I mean, and we got these major clients and we know where the industry is at. So chasing titles, and of course people want to get to RC and NC and they want these income increases for sure. But when you chase the title, you lose kind of the foundation of what you're actually doing, which people aren't following you because you're following a title. They're following you because of the example you are and what you're able to help them accomplish. They're following you because they believe that they can become more successful by following your lead. And that's really, at the end of the day, however, whatever goals you have attached to that, hopefully that helps you look at, self gratification or validation in a different light. So, all right, Jared, I think this is a success. We did we got done at like 30. I think actually we stopped the slides at like 30 minutes, and then we were able to knock out 20 minutes of Q&A. Yeah, great questions, Jared. Thanks for being such a great example of what bouncing back can look like, because all of us are going to go through different, obstacles and challenges. And looking forward to see you at R&R and all the other regional meetings we got coming up.
Definitely, man. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Van, and everybody for letting me be on this call. Guys, utilize the number if I can be in any help, any way, shape, or form. And I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of you guys at R&R, man. Guys, take care.
Awesome. Take care, everybody.